The room goes quiet as the piano carries the first note. Before we step inside, understand this. Money can make a cage look beautiful, but it cannot make it safe. Lena stands there in a blinding silver gown that costs more than most people's yearly rent, while Derek keeps his hand fixed to her lower back. There is no affection in that grip. It is a warning. One wrong move, and she will pay for it the moment those doors lock. Across the ballroom, Victor Salvatore has just walked in. He does not look surprised to see her. That is what makes this night dangerous. The king of the underworld has found the woman everyone else refuses to notice, and a golden leash is still a leash. Inside this suffocating room, heavy designer cologne is working overtime to mask the stench of corruption. Watch Lena by the entrance, her pulse hammering like a trapped bird. She never wanted that flashy dress. Derek forced it on her, tossing out a cruel joke about her clothes looking pathetic. She swallowed her pride just to avoid another explosion. The gown dips wide open in the back, a calculated move so Derek can put his property on display. She has been drowning in this nightmare for 2 endless years. And in that moment, the truth is hard to miss. Glitter can distract the room, but it cannot erase pain. If you look closely beneath the heavy makeup on her shoulder, the dark edges of a fresh bruise are already bleeding through. No amount of expensive concealer can hide what a monster leaves behind. If anyone in that crowd stopped to look, they would feel the terror radiating off her. But this room is packed with people too hollow, too obsessed with their own status to notice a soul quietly shattering right next to them. Derek leans in close. His voice drops into a smooth tone for the audience, while his fingers dig hard into her spine. He whispers, demanding a smile. Lena offers him an empty stare, trying to detach her mind from her body. He instantly snaps, ordering her to behave while pressing a fake kiss to her temple. To the room, it looks like romance, but his thumb is physically crushing her jawbone. When survival is on the line, we learn to wear whatever mask keeps us breathing. She forces a bright, thin, empty smile, and he finally backs off. Without warning, the drunk guest stumbles into their space. Watch this closely, because in a fraction of a second, Derek flips a switch. He instantly becomes the warmest, most charismatic guy in the room. That is the exact chilling illusion he used to trap her. By the time his mask slipped, she was isolated, having cut off her own sister just to quiet his paranoia. Derek introduces Lena as his wife, ignoring her bare hand. It is a sick mental flex. The stranger undresses her with his eyes, asking where Derek found her. Derek laughs, claiming he snatched her from a gallery desk, like she is just a shiny piece of property. And that is the part that matters. The moment someone starts cutting you off from the people who love you, pay attention. Isolation is usually where the trap begins. Lena keeps her face blank, sinking into a state of learned helplessness, while Derek casually erases her history. She was never just a girl at a desk. She was the brilliant director of that gallery. When Derek targeted her, it was a calculated flood of affection. She told him no 3 times, but he bulldozed her boundaries, flooding her office with flowers, treating her rejections like a fun challenge. That is how the steel trap snapped shut. She made the heartbreaking human mistake of confusing a dark obsession for romantic devotion. Desperate for one clean breath of air, she excuses herself to get a drink. She navigates the marble floor, ankles trembling in the unstable heels he demanded she wear. Sometimes a cage looks like a castle when the bars are painted gold. Her face stays trapped in that empty smile, and the wealthy crowd sees only another beautiful woman. Then the air grows heavier. Every tiny hair on Lena's neck rises. She turns slowly, scanning the sea of expensive suits, and finds him. Victor Salvatore, the most feared man in the city. No gold, no theatrics. Just dark tailored clothes, and a cold control that bends the room around him. Men step aside before he reaches them. What unsettles Lena is not his power, but the faint look in his eyes as if he recognized her long before this party ever began. Her mind maps the invisible power lines of the room in a second. Those silent giants guarding the exits answer only to Victor. When you survive a domestic war zone, you become an expert at reading danger. Most men look at her like an expensive trophy. But Victor is different. He is dissecting her from across the floor, cutting straight through the glamour. He sees the unnatural tension in her shoulders, He reads the defensive way she holds her arm and notices the ache in her jaw. Realizing someone has cracked your armor is terrifying. Panic surges through her chest. She snaps her gaze away, hurrying toward the bar, frantic to rebuild her mask. For someone who has spent years hiding, being seen can feel almost as dangerous as being hurt. Lena grips the cold edge of the marble bar, fighting the tremors in her hands. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. It is a trick her older sister taught her, a ghost from a life before Derek stole her away. Her frantic heart finally settles. She refuses to turn around, but she can feel the heavy weight of Victor's gaze locked onto her spine. The bartender slides her drinks forward, offering a troubled look. That look says enough. It is the painful realization that the person in front of you is a prisoner. Lena forces a polite nod and walks back into the fire. Derek blindly snatches the glass, his fingers hooking around her waist like a shackle. Some prisons are not made of iron or concrete. Some stand right in the middle of a crowded room. Across town, the political mixer has turned into another cage. It is a playground for wolves, all circling a politician named Alderman Kowalski. Lena is checked out, letting the wine numb her mind to survive another unbearable evening. Then the air shifts. Her eyes meet his. Victor, a towering figure from the underworld. That single moment of eye contact is a shock to the system. For 2 suspended seconds, the fake reality she built to survive shatters. No forced smiles, just raw recognition. Derek feels her posture change instantly. His fingers violently dig into her hip, claiming his property. His fragile ego is cracking as he demands to know where she is looking. That small reaction says enough. A man who is truly secure does not need to crush someone just to feel strong. Derek changes shape so quickly it is almost sickening. Derek throws a warm smile at a guest, but the arm around Lena turns to iron. His voice drops to that hollow pitch of a man on the edge of rage. The second they are alone, he shoves her into the shadows, to anyone walking by. It looks like an intimate exchange, the truth. It is pure torment. He crushes his grip into her hip, ensuring she will wake up with a vivid bruise. He snarls in her face, spitting out the name Victor Salvatore. But Lena does not blink. She has no idea who that is. Because Derek has kept her locked in the dark. That detail matters. Always check on the friends who suddenly go quiet. Cutting a victim off from the outside world is how the breaking usually starts. For 1 second, everything narrows. Lena is surviving in deliberate blindness. She only knows Derek operates in the shadows of the city. But when he hisses the name Salvatore, a terrified twitch in his jaw betrays him. Lena scrambles to soothe his ego, begging him not to use that cold tone she fears. Derek just smiles, letting out a cruel laugh. He whispers a dark promise that she will regret this. The silent panic screaming behind her eyes is devastating. She is conditioned to measure every breath he takes, reading his mood like a sailor bracing for a hurricane. She already knows the weight of the punishment waiting at home. That is what trauma does. When you live inside a storm, you learn to read the lightning before the thunder hits. The next move begins with a polite lie about needing fresh air. Derek violently steers Lena toward the freezing terrace. She just lets her mind go numb, having already done the harsh math. Fighting him in public only guarantees a worse beating behind locked doors. Men like Derek weaponize social manners, knowing victims will not make a scene. But suddenly, the vibe shatters. A deep voice cuts straight through the music. It is Victor Salvatore. His enforcers lurk in the shadows. And Victor looks right through Derek like he is invisible, instantly destroying the coward's fake dominance. Derek scrambles, stammering a pathetic smile. Now his mask slips. The loudest man in the room is often the one with the most to hide. True power does not need a speech. The room is heavy with secrets, and every silence says more than the music. Watch Victor for a second. Here is a dangerous man who never raises his voice to make the chandeliers shake. He extends a polite hand, but Derek is terrified. To mask his crumbling nerves, this coward tightens his grip on Lena's waist, leaving a bruise. It is a pathetic display of control. Victor catches this instantly. He locks eyes with Lena, reading every page of her silent trauma, before casually dropping the name Kowalski. Derek shatters. He stumbles over his words, scrambling to fake respect. Real power stays quiet, fake power starts to panic. Never pretend to be the wolf, when every predator in the room can smell fear. Watch how the room's atmosphere shifts. Growing freezing cold, Victor claims the space without a single sudden movement. introducing himself as an investor who tolerates no surprises. You can feel the warmth drain from Derek's hand on Lena. His body slips into survival mode, realizing he just crossed paths with the real underworld still. Derek tries to wear a hollow smile. Victor dismisses him entirely. He turns his heavy gaze to Lena, noting her pale skin and suggesting she needs water. Derek tries to snap back, faking his lost authority, but the tension is suffocating. The smart guests are already slipping toward the exits, sensing the coming storm. The room understands it before Derek does. When the quietest people in a room start leaving, there is usually a reason. The string quartet keeps playing. But for Lena, the world narrows to a terror. Victor scans her like an open book. He catches every microscopic flinch and shallow breath trapped in her chest. When he asks if she wants to sit, Derek foolishly tries to answer for her. It is a dangerous mistake. Victor silences him with a gaze made of ice, stating he was not speaking to him. Lena is paralyzed, her voice stolen by fear. Derek's fingers dig harder into her side, calculating if hurting her in public is worth salvaging his fragile pride. He forces her to speak, trapped in survival instinct. She whispers that she is fine. It is painful to watch. Every silence she gives him becomes one more lock on her own cage. This is where the balance finally cracks. Victor stands there radiating the quiet gravity of a true mastermind. Meanwhile, Derek is sweating, packing his words with that pathetic babble you only hear when a hustler meets a real predator. Victor simply lets the agonizing silence crush the man while the music floats around them then. Derek makes the worst mistake of his life. He aggressively yanks Lena by the waist. Hold on to this second. This is the breaking point. Lena will replay this single second for years. The violent pull, the sharp, tiny gasp she let slip. It was the exact moment she realized there was no way out, and there it is. A person's real character shows when control starts slipping from their hands. That broken gasp from Lena changes the temperature of the room. To the unobservant eye, Victor looks relaxed. But watch his face closely, and you see his eyes go dead. It is the hollow look of a killer locking onto a target. He does not yell. He politely tells Derek to remove his hand. And his calm tone is the most terrifying sound in the world. The ballroom freezes for 3 agonizing seconds. Lena stops breathing. In the shadows, Victor's men shift, waiting for the silent nod to end this man's life. But Victor chooses a different path, moving with deliberate slowness. He sets his glass down, erases Derek from his vision, and steps directly in front of Lena. The room learns it without anyone saying a word. The loudest man suddenly looks small, and the quiet one becomes the danger everyone feels. In the middle of a packed room, Victor isolates her with frightening ease. He speaks to Lena as if Derek has been erased from existence and asks for 30 seconds of her trust. Her defenses are already cracked. He reaches out with the care of a man handling shattered glass, lifts her chin, and kisses her in front of everyone. The musicians miss a note. The waiters freeze. This is not romance. It is a public claim. A warning to the underworld that she is under his protection now. The terrifying part is that Lena cannot tell whether he is saving her, using her, or both. He pulls back slightly, whispering that she is safe, forcing her to lock in that quiet submission. Only then does his attention drift back to Derek. Derek is already coming apart. He is falling apart. The color drains from his cheeks. His arms hang uselessly, and his mind scrambles for a lifeline. Victor keeps his voice smooth, casually advising the man to go home. When Derek wildly screams that Lena is his wife, Victor delivers the knockout blow. He reveals to the silent room that the marriage paperwork was never filed. The quiet that follows is heavy and complete. Victor remains perfectly still, letting pure humiliation dismantle Derek's remaining reputation. A life built on a lie can collapse in one quiet sentence. Derek is breaking, but Victor is not finished. Victor aims for the deepest wounds, exposing the dark bruise on Lena's shoulder. He calls out the cowardly abuse for everyone to witness. It is a ruthless dismantling of power. By dragging this ugly secret into the light, he flips the gravity of the room. Derek spirals into panic. His eyes dart frantically, realizing the guests have circled them like wolves watching a wounded animal. Backed into a corner, Derek screams the names of his powerful friends, trying to summon a ghost of authority. It is a painful, hollow display. He is a weak man watching his empire burn. The room can see it now. Respect cannot be borrowed from powerful names, especially when everyone can see you drowning. Then Victor delivers the final blow. He reveals, almost lazily, that Derek's underground network has already been dismantled. Not threatened. Not investigated. Dismantled. Lena hears it and feels a new kind of fear bloom under her ribs, because that means Victor knew far more about Derek than a stranger should. He places a heavy hand on her back and guides her into his orbit, cutting off Derek's access with the cold finality of a warden. No messages. No second chances. When Derek steps forward, Victor's voice drops into a guttural warning, and Derek folds instantly. A line has been drawn. But Lena is not the one holding the pen. Watching a man lose his mind is a painful spectacle. Derek stands deeply confused, like a bully whose victim just walked away. That confusion rapidly ignites into violent rage, but before he can tense his fists, Lena screams at him to stop. In that one fractured syllable, she shatters years of quiet mental torture. Derek tries to soften his tone, using a sickening, manipulative voice to coax her back into the cage, but she refuses him entirely. Through this volatile emotion, Victor remains perfectly still, an unmoving wall of stone. As the adrenaline burns out, Lena's body begins to shake violently, entirely dependent on a dangerous man to keep from collapsing. For Lena, even one word of resistance costs more courage than the room will ever understand. What follows is not rescue. It is a quieter kind of control. As Derek backs away, a broken man, Victor seamlessly begins the isolation phase. He keeps his heavy hands resting on Lena, grounding her strictly in his reality. His voice takes on a chilling calculation. He does not speak softly, because soft implies weakness. Instead, he speaks with a gentle, crushing authority. He starts issuing quiet commands to his crew, stripping away every choice Lena might have made. She stares into those cold eyes, unaware she just traded a rusted cage for a gilded prison. It happens in the blink of an eye. If a rescuer immediately takes away your choices, the cage has only changed owners. Victor's next move is quieter and more dangerous. Victor just pulled off a harsh public takedown, wiping out the only life Lena knew. Now he stands over her shivering body and actually asks if she feels safe. When she whispers that he is still a stranger, he flips a switch. He pours on this sickening charm, claiming he was the only guy in that blood-soaked room who truly saw her. He is weaponizing her feeling of being invisible, playing her sorrow like a piano. Then he wraps his huge hand over her wrist to steady her shaking fingers while she drinks, forcing her to rely on his strength just to swallow. Real safety lets a person stand on her own. It does not tighten another leash around her neck. The manipulation is quiet, almost elegant. Victor drapes his heavy wool coat across Lena's freezing shoulders without a single word. To the untrained eye it looks like grace, but really it is a territorial brand. He is wrapping her in his scent, silently declaring that she belongs to him now. You can practically see her mind breaking as she steps into the bitter wind. Inside his armored sedan, she rubs her raw hands together, desperate to hide her violent shaking. But notice where Victor sits. He stays pressed against the far opposite door, a terrifying display of untouchable power. The distance looks respectful, but it is still part of the trap. The signs of a shattered soul are all over Lena, and they are hard to watch. Watch Lena shrinking back against the cold leather seat. Grateful he keeps his distance, that is pure trauma taking the wheel. Reality crashes over her as the engine hums. She just handed her entire existence to a ruthless, dangerous man, without even asking where they are heading. Her knuckles turn white against the tinted glass, but Victor is a master of the dark. His voice drops into a smooth rhythm as he lists off the armed guards and heavy iron locks waiting to protect her. He knows total control happens the moment a captive feels perfectly safe. The walls meant to keep monsters out can become a prison of their own. Victor plays this like a high-stakes chess match, and Lena does not even know she is on the board. He promises total safety, yet silently demands her verbal surrender. When pure terror chokes her throat and she can only manage a weak nod, he flatly rejects it. He forces her to speak the words out loud, slowly conditioning her bruised mind to bend to his will. The second she whispers her submission, he rewards her by sliding back into the shadows, offering a sick illusion of choice. It is quiet war at its finest. Watching blurred streetlights bleed through the tinted glass, She fixates on pointless things like an old phone number just to stay sane. She clings to broken fragments of her old life because she can feel them slipping away. He knows exactly where to press. Lena spills the truth about her family in a rushed panic. Terrified, Derek will hunt down the only blood relative she has left. Victor cuts through that fear with one cold sentence. His men are already outside her sister's house. For a breath, Lena feels relief. Then the second meaning lands. He found the sister without asking. He found the house. He built protection around the one place Lena still considered untouched. In that single moment, Victor becomes both shield and threat, and that confusion is exactly where loyalty begins to grow. He boxes up her fragile emotions with frightening skill. He tells her to ignore her sister's anger and focus only on breathing through the next hour. When she finally asks why he is doing this, Victor lets his mask slip just enough to show a wound. He says he once lost his own sister to a monster, and for a second the car feels less like a trap. Then he adds that his men buried the man who did it. The tenderness and the violence arrive in the same breath. Shared pain can feel like truth, especially when someone uses it to stand close enough to become necessary. The quiet war happening inside this car is staggering. Victor tells her he does not want her gratitude, which is the perfect way to ensure she gives him everything. He calls her valuable, making a discarded woman feel truly seen. Then he dangles the cruelest bait of all, offering total freedom if she wants to walk away. But this crime lord knows the truth. If you build a warm fortress, a broken soul will never choose the freezing rain. Suddenly, a tear rolls down her cheek, and she finally lets it fall, with her ex crying guaranteed a harsh beating. Letting that tear fall means her nervous system actually believes she is safe. The hardest prisons to escape are often the ones we help lock from the inside. On his own turf, Victor becomes even harder to read. His estate is a huge fortress hiding behind towering iron gates. When the car stops, he steps out but keeps his hands at his sides. He refuses to offer a hand. It is a calculated move to make her step towards him, silently to her to follow his shadow, struggling up the stone steps in borrowed heels. Her spirit is already crumbling under his quiet dominance. The heavy oak doors swing open to reveal Rosa, the iron-willed matriarch of the house. Rosa instantly grabs Lena by the elbow, pulling her straight into the velvet trap. Lena is simply too exhausted to fight the current. That is how control works when it stops needing force. True power is not about forcing someone to submit. It is about making them so utterly drained that they gladly hand over the keys. This is where the house begins to feel less like shelter and more like a test. The inside of this mansion is designed like a beautiful psychological isolation tank. The echoing vaulted ceilings and the slow ticking of a grandfather clock are meant to hypnotize a fragile mind. Roses out the rules of this golden cage, offering a warm bed and fresh clothes. The trap is easy to miss because it feels so warm. They are drowning her in aggressive hospitality. When Rosa gently asks if she is hungry, Lena freezes, haunted by an abusive ex who starved her over tiny mistakes. But Rosa just brings her a bowl of warm soup, instantly building a deep emotional reliance. The truth sits there, uncomfortable and plain. Sometimes, the most dangerous weapon a person can ever use against you is sudden, overwhelming kindness. Victor stands perfectly still in the doorway, soaking up his role as the ultimate savior. When Lena quietly tries to thank him, he shuts her down with a strict command to get some sleep, finalizing his control. Upstairs, the guest room is a terrifying masterpiece of manipulation, designed to force a traumatized brain to shut down. It features heavy woven blankets and absolute, pin-drop silence, but the cruelest trick is the heavy brass deadbolt on the inside of the door. Rosa points it out without speaking a single word. They are letting Lena believe she has the power to lock the monsters out, hiding the dark reality that this fake safety is exactly how they lock her in. The thought is chilling because it feels so possible. Giving a broken person the quiet illusion of control is always vastly more binding than putting them in iron chains. The exact second that heavy metal deadbolt slides into place, 2 agonizing years of pure survival mode shatter completely. For the first time in 1,000 nights, her exhausted brain actually believes she is out of harm's way. She grabs the phone to call her sister. But listen to how fractured her reality has become. She stammers into the receiver, telling Maya she is fine while refusing to say where she is hiding. Maya is sobbing, begging to rescue her, but Lena violently rejects the lifeline. She is already defending the ruthless man who took her. Her broken mind believes that staying inside this velvet mafia cage is safer than facing her old abuser outside. It shines a glaring light on a sad human truth. People will almost always choose a beautifully decorated cage over stepping out into a terrifying, unpredictable freedom. The surveillance aspect is truly chilling. Lena tells her sister an unmarked car will be watching her house. She spins it as a protective measure. But we know it is a terrifying flex of his tracking network. When Maya affectionately calls her Lenny, Lena short-circuits. Her abusive ex banned that nickname to crush her spirit. Overwhelmed by the memory, she collapses onto the mattress. Minutes later, Rosa swoops back in with hot food, snapping out of her daze. Lena asks a question that officially seals her fate. She wants to know if Victor brings a lot of women to this house. Stockholm Syndrome is taking deep root. The exact moment you start getting curious about the personal life of your captor, you have already lost the mental war. Watch this brilliant setup together. Rosa is not just making dinner chat. She is running a quiet lesson in total brainwashing sitting there. She takes Victor from a cold-blooded, dangerous man and elevates him into a saint. She drops the heavy detail that no woman has entered this fortress in 11 years, weaponizing that fact to make Lena feel like the chosen one. She sells the dangerous illusion that Victor is an untouchable shield. And just like that, the payload hits. Lena is crying. Utterly overwhelmed by this fabricated safety net. It hits hard, doesn't it? The hard truth is that when your soul is starving for just an ounce of peace, even a locked steel cage feels exactly like a miracle. Watching Lena strip away her clothes is a clinical act of survival. She forces her meal down before panic seals her throat. Shivering, she wraps herself in Victor's oversized shirt, blindly absorbing the dangerous man's territorial claim. Scrubbing off her makeup deletes the fake perfection her ex demanded. In that mirror stands an exhausted survivor, blind to the reality that she just traded a sloppy abuser for a master architect of control. She collapses into bed when heavy footsteps echo outside. Her hand flies to her throat out of habit. Before she realizes it is just the predator patrolling his turf. The lesson here is harsh but true. Running blindly from a chaotic little fire will sometimes drop you straight into the dead center of a roaring inferno. The rhythm of boots fades, and Lena slips into a dead, dreamless sleep. When her eyes open to a bruised gray light at 7:10, the madness of the previous night crashes into her chest. Her panic rises fast, stopping only when she spots the chair. Sitting there is a perfectly folded stack of fresh clothes, tags still attached. A handwritten note claims it was just a rough guess. Of course, that is not true. Men like Don Victor do not guess. The fact that these garments fit her like a second skin is a terrifying, quiet display of pure power. His syndicate has been watching her every move for a long time. Sometimes the most dangerous traps in this world are exactly the ones custom-tailored to fit us perfectly. Lena wakes in the quiet of a dangerous man's fortified compound. Dressed in his clothes, she calculates the heavy toll of her trauma. Wandering into the kitchen, a carefully crafted illusion instantly wraps around her. This domestic warmth is rigged to lower her guard. A heavy hitter named Michael leans against the counter sipping coffee, while a private chef slides a hot plate of food her way. We recognize this as the peak grooming phase of a psychological takeover. Handing a starving soul warmth triggers a desperate biochemical bond to a new kingpin. She eats as if her life depends on it. Here is something worth remembering. The hardest cages to escape are never made of cold iron bars. They are built entirely from the desperate relief of finally feeling safe. Michael drops a perfectly timed update, calmly stating her sister is safe and took the day off work. Hearing this, Lena crushes the note into her palm, a textbook reflex of pure trauma. She asks if Michael was inside her house, and he coldly admits an operative is still stationed there. Next, they march her straight into Victor's private study. The room radiates unadulterated dominance, with books stacked high, a roaring fire, and huge leather chairs. Victor sits reviewing contracts like a king ruling his underworld. It is a meticulously engineered theater of comfort meant entirely to disarm her. The lesson here is harsh but necessary to hear. The hardest prisons to ever break out of are always the ones beautifully lined with warm, cozy velvet. Victor pulls off his glasses, a calculated move to bring her heart rate down. He pretends to care if she slept, then launches into a tactical breakdown. This is where his psychological games truly shine. He positions himself as a dangerous savior. Revealing her toxic ex left 31 violent voicemails. Victor already listened to every single one. He invaded her privacy, yet sells it as a protective shield. He casually suggests destroying her phone, and she simply agrees to the isolation, ready to erase her old life completely. The most suffocating forms of control will always wear a slick suit and cleverly disguise themselves as your protection. Watch the chilling precision of his master plan. Victor states his crew is hitting her apartment at 10, bragging about manipulating her ex's schedule to keep him away. He calmly asks what personal items she wants rescued. Lena, swimming in psychological shock, asks for just a simple ceramic dish and a blue book. When she tries to mention the gifts Derek bought her, the words literally choke in her throat. Victor nods, smoothly shifting to how he is systematically destroying Derek's entire existence. He casually flexes about $4 million in lost contracts. He is not doing this for justice, it is pure territorial dominance. Sometimes, the monster who swoops in to save you from the dark is really just a much bigger, much hungrier monster. Victor's voice fills the quiet room. He explains that a desperate man losing his empire becomes dangerously unpredictable. But Victor already planned for the fallout, positioning his shadow as her shield. He points out that Derek has no real friends, making him isolated and easy to crush. Then comes the final psychological maneuver. Victor reveals he filed an anonymous police report regarding the abuse, placing the grand illusion of power right into Lena's shaking hands. He tells her she can walk away, or throw Derek in a cell with a syndicate backing her. Lena sits frozen, admitting she has no idea what to do. Victor nods, calmly validating her confusion. True, lasting healing almost never happens on a neat, perfectly organized schedule. Watch this huge shift. As Lena finally pushes back, she stammers, fighting past her trauma to ask about that wild, possessive kiss at the hotel. She looks the dangerous man dead in the eye, asking if he knew Derek was hurting her before he stepped in. Victor puts his folder down, refusing to flinch. He admits he was profiling Derek for 6 weeks over a turf war. He confesses he did not know Lena existed until that night. But watched Derek control her for 20 minutes and instantly weaponized her pain. He could have ruined Derek in the shadows, but chose to publicly execute his rival's ego instead. The truth is often freezing cold, but a cold truth will always save you better than a warm, comforting lie. Victor refuses to sugarcoat his actions. He admits the kiss was a calculated psychological weapon. He needed to plant a flag, making a primal display of ownership in front of 300 guests. A simple handshake was never going to establish dominance. But then he flips the script. He acknowledges that he bypassed her consent, delivering a serious apology. He swears he will never use her in a maneuver again without asking first. Lena stares at him. His face holds no warmth, replaced entirely by this brutal, razor-sharp honesty. For a girl manipulated her whole life, this raw transparency is addictive. It is the very foundation of Stockholm Syndrome. The painful truth. To a shattered mind, mere predictability feels exactly like passionate love and true safety. Lena finally makes her choice to press charges. Victor does not miss a beat, offering an elite attorney named Karen Delocqua, pointing out that this lawyer is unconnected to his own criminal underworld. Lena squeezes her hands together and drops the heaviest question of the night. She looks him in the eye and asks why she should trust him. Victor's comeback is a lesson in dark psychology. He tells her she should not trust him yet. He exposes his own violent history, admitting he is a dangerous man. By throwing his own red flags onto the table, he shatters her remaining defenses. He only guarantees her physical safety. Trust is never freely handed out. It is a heavy currency forged entirely in the slow fires of consistency. Victor walks over to pour a fresh cup of coffee. As he hands the mug to Lena, their fingers barely brush. This tiny detail is everything. Lena does not flinch. For a battered girl, simply not flinching at a man's touch is a gigantic neurological victory. She sits there, holding onto that spark of realization. They remain in complete silence for half an hour. A man like Victor knows exactly how powerful it is to just sit quietly with someone's pain. When she almost breaks down, he stares into the fire, giving her dignity and space. When her ex's lawyer calls, Victor hits ignore like the man is a ghost. At 11 sharp, the new attorney walks in. The painful truth. Deep healing is rarely some huge sunrise. It is just a series of small survivals against the dark. Watch this lesson in power. Enter Karen. She is 50-something, sharp as a razor, and has no patience for Mafia posturing. She steps in and instantly kicks Victor out of his own sanctuary, and the craziest part, The terrifying, dangerous man just obeys, left alone. Karen drops the hammer, asking Lena to pinpoint the exact second her husband first turned into a monster. 2 harsh hours of raw truth spill out. Lena breaks down twice. Karen does not offer fake hugs or hollow pity. She just quietly slides the tissues over. That is the scene in its purest form. True support is not about throwing a pity party. It is about building a safe room where someone can finally confess their darkest nightmares without ever feeling small. Picture this scene. Lena is sitting across from Karen, who operates like a highly paid emotional surgeon. She is not here to be a friend. She is the ice-cold mirror. Lena desperately needs to stop feeling like she is losing her mind. For hours, they dissect the rotting corpse of her marriage. The ultimate game plan. Total radio silence. Lena has to build a brick wall against the guy who spent years gaslighting her into oblivion. Karen leans in, dropping the truth that surviving a mental torture chamber does not mean you are broken. It means you are still breathing. The lesson we can take from this mess is clear. Getting out of a nightmare is a huge win. But real healing kicks in the exact second you realize you were never the crazy one. The lawyer packs up and leaves, and the silence in this huge room drops like an anvil. Lena is practically frozen by the fireplace. When she finally opens her exhausted eyes, there is a giant shadow blocking the door. It is Victor. Standing there like a beautifully tailored Grim Reaper, he watches her with those dead, hawk-like eyes, softly ordering her to eat. It is that classic mobster move where they dress up control to look like gentle care. As it gets dark, he casually drops that he moved her stuff right into his personal bedroom, and Lena, completely defeated. She actually whispers, "Thank you to the guy who just locked her up." The warning is a bitter pill. Never mistake a beautiful, shiny golden cage for actual breathable freedom. Victor steps out of the shadows and starts laying down the Mafia commandments. She has to eat, she has to sleep, she has to put her shattered brain back together. His voice drops into that low, dangerous register as he swears to destroy her ex. Lena is so brainwashed by her past that she actually looks up shaking and asks this dangerous man what he wants in return. His answer is terrifying. He looks her dead in the eye and whispers that he wants nothing, by refusing to put a price tag on her life. He instantly turns himself into her flawless, untouchable savior. The lesson here hits hard. The easiest way to trap a broken soul is to convince them they are finally running free. Lena is trapped in her own head, dealing with violent flashbacks like a bad movie. She keeps seeing Victor face off with her toxic ex, acting like a predator. She can still feel that desperate kiss they shared, the one she tried to bury. She just nods at his strict rules and sinks right into survival mode. Outside, a huge winter storm is hammering Chicago, burying the estate in snow and locking them inside. They sit there in this suffocating silence while his dark eyes track her every single move. The next morning, the heavy steel doors of his fortress remind her she is still a prisoner. The warning is a harsh reality check. Your dark past will always track you down, even if you try to hide behind the guards of a ruthless, dangerous man. Lena is walking on eggshells, constantly hearing the heavy boots of armed guards pacing downstairs. Her shoulders are still throbbing from the bruises. Derek gave her a sick receipt for the years she spent under his boot. Digging through her unpacked boxes, she finally touches things she was banned from owning, clothes he despised, an old book from her mother that she grips just to remember she is still a person. Down at the very bottom, she finds hidden photos of her sister. Her ex tried to burn her past to the ground, hoping to leave her isolated with no way out. The lesson here is a huge act of defiance. Never let anyone erase your history or sever your ties. Those faded photos are the exact anchor you need to hold your ground in a harsh storm. The emotional damage on this woman is off the charts. She keeps flashing back to the night Derek smashed her phone over a harmless photo, only to drop to his knees sobbing fake tears to reel her back in. His sick games forced her to bury her own life, back in the present. She meets her new shadow, a Mafia enforcer named Tommy. He has an innocent face, but his dead eyes scream contract killer. He politely informs her the estate is locked down. When Lena tries to set a boundary, Tommy just hits her with a blank, terrifying smile. They feed her warm meals exactly like an exotic, captive bird. The truth hangs in the cold air. Always trust your gut. A velvet-lined cage is still a prison, no matter how soft the guards talk to you. We need to watch how Victor plays this hand. He strolls into the kitchen, and his dark energy just sucks the oxygen right out of the room. He starts dropping the rules of a guy who runs a criminal empire. He cuts her off, ordering her to use his phones, trust only his men, and never leave his guarded walls. He sells this complete isolation as a bulletproof shield, quietly deleting the last tiny scraps of her independence. He drops the news that the cops are coming, casually reminding her that he is the one pulling the strings. The red flag is impossible to miss. Be careful when someone demands your reliance. A self-proclaimed hero can seamlessly turn into the most terrifying warden you will ever meet. Watch the way Victor stares at her before leaving the room. It is this heavy, lingering look built to remind her exactly who holds the leash. And he does not even have to raise his voice. The second that door shuts, the temperature drops. Karen sits down and starts doing psychological surgery. She makes Lena map out the most horrific moments she survived with Derek, but the nightmare is still breathing. Lena practically turns into a ghost when she realizes her ex has been blowing up her old phones. The pathetic guy is actually trying to buy her silence with some cheap cash in a dirty apartment in Phoenix. The warning is one you can never forget. Money can never buy real forgiveness, and a desperate payoff is just a final, bitter insult to a soul that has been shattered. Karen sits across that table and just ruthlessly shreds Derek's toxic playbook. She warns Lena that a desperate abuser never stops at throwing cheap cash. He is going straight for the heavy emotional blackmail. He will cry fake tears to their mutual friends, playing the wounded victim for a free audience. He will threaten to end his own life, begging for 5 minutes just to get closure. But let me tell you, closure is a total scam. It is just a rusty crowbar manipulators use to rip your healing wounds right back open. Karen looks her dead in the eye and says she owes that monster no seconds of her time. That is what taking power back looks like. You owe your abuser nothing, walking away in total. Unbreakable silence is the most harsh revenge you can ever serve. Lena taking a quick walk outside is a massive, terrifying hurdle. She stands on the freezing concrete, watching some normal guy walk his dog. For one beautiful second, the suffocating fog of paranoia actually lifts. But that piece gets blasted to pieces the second Detective Brooks rolls up. Brooks is a hardened veteran. She could not care less about Victor or his dirty money. She steps out, and her questions cut straight to the bone. She is poking Lena, trying to see if she is a free woman or just a helpless pawn trapped between two predators. The warning is a heavy pill to swallow. Real freedom is not just getting to breathe fresh air. It is the power to walk your own path without a terrifying shadow riding your heels. For 90 harsh minutes, Lena forces herself to relive the darkest days of her life. Detective Brooks sits across from her, face still, voice careful. Once the truth is out, Brooks shifts from listener to tactician and confirms there is enough evidence to put Derek away for years. But then her eyes move toward the dark corners of Victor's mansion. She knows men like Victor do not give protection for free. She asks the question Lena has been avoiding since the night of the gala. What does he get by keeping her alive? The silence that follows feels heavier than the confession itself. The detective keeps her voice low, but every word lands hard. She asks what Victor gains by keeping Lena alive. And Lena reaches for the story he gave her about his dead sister. It sounds noble until Brooks opens a thin folder and slides one photo across the table. It shows Victor standing beside Derek 3 years earlier. Outside a closed club on the south side, Lena cannot breathe. Brooks says Victor did not just discover Derek at the gala. He had crossed paths with him long before Lena ever knew his name. For the first time, protection begins to look like a secret being managed. Before leaving, Brooks leaves the photo on the table like a blade. She says Victor is not careless. If he stepped into Lena's life, he had a reason. As long as she stays inside his mansion, the police can barely reach the truth through all that money and muscle. When the door clicks shut, Lena sits frozen, staring at the image until the faces blur. Her lawyer tries to speak, but Lena hears only one thing. Victor knew Derek before he kissed her in front of everyone. The rescue she has been clinging to suddenly has teeth. When she walks downstairs, the house feels different. Not safer, quitter. She wanders into the kitchen and catches the end of a Mafia briefing. Victor at the head of the table, his men speaking in clipped code. One name cuts through her fog, Kowalski. The same politician Derek used to brag about. Victor looks up and stops the room with a single glance. His men leave too quickly, too obediently. Lena remains at the doorway, holding the detective's photo in her hand, and understands she has stepped into a story that began long before she arrived. Left alone with him, she places the photo on the table. Victor does not deny it. That is worse. He pours whiskey with steady hands and admits Derek once carried money for men under his protection. Years ago, Derek stole from the wrong people, then hid behind politics and a pretty life. Lena asks if Victor saved her because he cared, or because Derek had become useful bait. The silence that follows is colder than any confession. Victor finally says both truths can exist in the same room. Her stomach turns because that is exactly what she was afraid of. The wind rattles the glass while Lena fights the urge to run. Victor tells her he did not know Derek was hurting her until the night of the gala. She wants to believe that, but belief feels dangerous now. He admits he watched the room, waited for Derek to make one public mistake, and used her pain to expose him. He says it with no pride, only brutal honesty. Lena asks if the kiss was part of the move. Victor's jaw tightens. Yes, he says. And then, after a pause that hurts more than the answer, he says he regretted needing it the second he saw her face. That confession should break whatever spell is left, but it does something messier. Lena sees the monster clearly, and she also sees the man who did not pretend to be clean. Victor steps back, leaving space between them like a line neither of them deserves to cross. He tells her she owes him nothing, not loyalty, not forgiveness, not trust. It is the right answer, and that makes it more dangerous. A gentle liar would have begged. Victor simply gives her the truth and lets it bleed on the table. For Lena, honesty has become the hardest trap to escape. She asks for time, and this time he gives it without touching her. No command, no hand on her back, just a nod. But the house remains locked. The guards remain outside, and every phone call still passes through his people. Freedom spoken aloud is not the same as freedom in your hands, alone in the hallway. Lena realizes the cage has changed shape again. Derek trapped her with fear. Victor traps her with order, safety, and terrible honesty. One kind of prison bruises the skin. The other teaches you to call the bars a shelter. Near dawn, a soldier enters with news that Derek has vanished from police watch. Victor's expression barely moves, but the room sharpens around him. Lena sees it now. He is not surprised. He expected Derek to bolt because he left him just enough room to panic. Victor calmly says Derek will run toward the one secret he thinks can save him. When Lena asks what secret, Victor finally looks away. The answer arrives without words. Somewhere in Derek's hands is proof that can damage Victor too. Lena is no longer just being protected. She is standing in the center of a war. By midnight, the mansion feels less like a sanctuary and more like a command center. Phones ring behind closed doors. Men move through the halls without making eye contact. Victor dictates routes. Names, favors owed. Lena listens from the staircase. Wrapped in a robe that suddenly feels borrowed from an enemy. He controls the search, the guards, the police contacts. Even the meals Rosa keeps pushing into her hands. No one asks what Lena wants. They only tell her what will happen next. That is when fear shifts into something clearer, anger. She finds him in the study, the fire burning, low the detective's photo still folded in her palm. Victor offers tea, but she does not take it. She asks him what Derek has on him. For once, he does not have an elegant answer ready. He admits there is a ledger, old and ugly, filled with names that could ruin half the city and bury the other half. Derek stole it as insurance. If it gets out, Victor's empire bleeds. If it stays hidden, Derek keeps leverage. Lena understands the cruel shape of it. Her escape was tangled in a criminal account book before she ever knew she needed saving. Lena refuses to let him send her to bed. She stands in front of the desk and tells him that if he uses her one more time without her consent, she will walk out and tell Brooks everything. Victor studies her for a long moment, and something in his face changes. Not softness. Respect, maybe. Or the recognition that the woman he thought was broken still has teeth. He agrees to one condition. From now on, she hears the truth before he makes a move that touches her life. It is not trust. It is a ceasefire drawn between two people who no longer have the luxury of lies. For the next week, Lena stops romanticizing the house. She counts exits. She memorizes guard shifts. She speaks to Karen without Victor in the room, and tells Maya more than she has told anyone. The spell does not break all at once. Trauma never lets go cleanly, but every ugly fact creates a crack in the fantasy. Then, on day 8, her phone lights up. Detective Brooks says Derek is behind bars, but there is no relief in her voice. Derek was arrested near Maya's street, carrying a gun and a small black notebook. Lena already knows what it is before Brooks says the word ledger. The arrest should feel like justice. Instead, it feels like the floor opening. Derek knew where Maya lived. Victor's men knew he would go there. And somehow, the police arrived at the exact second before blood was spilled. Across the room, Victor watches Lena absorb the pattern. He does not look victorious. He looks tired. That makes the truth worse. He planned for Derek to lead them to the ledger, and Maya's house was the bait he never dared name. Lena's hand goes cold around the phone. The man who saved her sister also gambled with her. When she confronts him, Rosa is the one who has to catch her before her knees give out. Victor does not lie. He says Maya was never unprotected. That 6 armed men were already in place, that Derek never got within 20 feet of the door. Lena slaps him before she can think. The room goes silent. Victor takes it without moving, no anger, no threat, just that dead, controlled stillness. Lena whispers that he used the last person she loved as a chess square. For the first time, Victor has no clean sentence to offer her. The silence is his confession. She demands air. And this time she demands it without begging. They drive to the frozen lake with guards far enough back for her to pretend she is alone. The wind tears at her coat while she tells him about the childhood kite. How everyone mourned the snapped string except her. She watched it vanish and thought it looked happy. Victor listens without interrupting. Then Lena turns and says the line he cannot control. Maybe a woman is not free just because a better man is holding the other end. It lands between them harder than any bullet. Victor could pull her close. He could make a speech. Instead, he stands in the cold and lets the truth hum between them. Lena admits she is terrified of Derek. Terrified of him. And even more terrified of the part of herself that still wants to stay. That is the ugliness trauma leaves behind. Fear can start sounding like devotion when it comes with a locked door and warm food. Victor finally says he will not ask her to choose him while she is still choosing safety. It is the first decent thing he has said without making it useful. The drive back is quiet until the call comes. Derek has hired a brutal attorney and posted bond through money no one can trace. Lena is in the kitchen when the news hits, scrubbing a counter so hard her knuckles redden. The old panic rises, but this time anger rises with it. Victor orders a full lockdown. Lena turns on him before the command finishes. No, she says. Not without me, if Derek is coming for her life. Then she will not be carried from room to room like a fragile object, while men trade decisions over her head. The moment tightens. Her lawyer is frantically trying to build a flimsy paper shield, rattling off a list of legal band-aids. An ankle monitor. A strict no-contact order. Stuck in Cook County for 16 weeks. She tells Lena not to show weakness because predators can smell it. But look at the moves off camera. The lawyer actually called Victor 10 minutes before calling Lena. The dangerous man used that window to quietly scatter his heavily armed guards across every inch of the property. He is locking her inside a giant vault built entirely out of gratitude and debt. True control never violently kicks down your front door. It quietly lays the bricks around you in the dead of night, so softly that you never even realize the exit is gone. You can practically feel the oxygen get sucked out of that house, replaced by the weight of a military lockdown. Even Rosa is in the kitchen gripping a wooden spoon, ready for war. When Victor finally rolls in past 5 o'clock, he does not pull Lena into a warm hug. He barks orders with the cold precision of a general mapping a battlefield. 4 shooters on the fence. 2 ghosts sweeping the street. 2 more tailing her sister. He even has his own spies tracking the stalker's every move. The steel jaws of his criminal empire snap shut, leaving Lena nowhere to run. It highlights a heavy pill we all have to swallow. Trading a chaotic nightmare for a high-security fortress is really just changing the name of your warden. True safety is useless if your spirit is locked in a cage. Step into the suffocating reality of this so-called protection. Victor is coldly tracking every breath the stalker takes. When Lena finally cracks, sobbing over the thought of surviving 16 weeks inside this pressure cooker, Victor just stares blankly and orders her to take it one day at a time. The paranoia ruins her. She stops sleeping in her bed, curling up in a hard chair with her back pressed against the plaster so nobody can sneak up behind her. By the 10th night, the heavy crunch of boots in the hall at 2 a.m. floods her veins with ice. But it is just Victor, pacing the dark like a guard dog. We often sprint into the shadows just to escape a blinding fire, but begging a merciless predator to stand guard at your door guarantees you will never sleep soundly again. Every night, Victor transforms into a silent ghost haunting his own estate. He creeps down the darkened hallways, purposefully stopping to hover just inches outside Lena's bedroom door. Any shrink would tell you this is a predator marking his territory. But to Lena's shattered mind, his creeping feels like pure salvation. She lies trembling under the covers, sinking deeper into this perfectly designed, toxic dependency. She actually thanks him for it. Then week 3 hits, and Derek starts his chaotic blitz, blowing up her phone with blocked calls. The voicemails are just the pathetic, sobbing script of a violent abuser crying about true love. It is a grim warning. Toxic monsters will always try to dress up their violent obsession in the cheap poetry of a grand, misunderstood romance. The quiet war kicks into high gear when Derek threatens to end his life outside a local church. We all know this trick. It is a calculated manipulation designed to drag her out of hiding. Her lawyer begs her to stay put, promising that obsessive stalkers read from the exact same pathetic script. But the mental damage is done. Lena spirals, wandering down the shadowy halls toward Victor's study, desperately hunting for an anchor. The dangerous man is sitting there, soaking in the warm glow of the fireplace. The second she walks in, he hangs up his phone. He knows exactly how to make himself the center of gravity in her crumbling world. She spills her frantic terror, and he coldly orders her to sit. It proves a heartbreaking reality. When you are drowning in pitch-black water, you will gladly accept a saving breath of air from the devil himself. The audacity of Victor's calm is almost obscene. Lena is hyperventilating about a literal madman hunting her down. And what does our Victor do? He slides a heavy glass across the desk and starts casually flexing his culinary skills. He turns intimacy into a weapon, bragging about his sweet old mother in Palermo and her perfect ossobuco recipe. He even throws in his 9-year streak of Sunday phone calls. It is ridiculously smooth, burying his bloody underworld empire under a cozy blanket of domestic small talk. True monsters never knock on your door wearing horns. They show up looking exactly like the fiercely loyal family you always desperately wanted. The vibe suddenly shifts from cooking show to a philosophy seminar. Victor leans back, casually dropping that his devout mother accepted his bloody career, just working overtime praying for his dark soul. Lena spots Russian literature on his shelf, and boom, Victor spins his painful origin story. He claims a priest in the 1980s gave him a beat-up copy of Crime and Punishment, predicting he would be either a great man or a terrible one. When she asks which path he chose, he stares into the fire and whispers that he aims for great but settles for bad. He paints his ruthlessness as a romantic, inevitable tragedy. Never let a selfish monster convince you that their cruel choices are just some heavy, poetic curse they are forced to carry. The contrast is almost cruel. Lena stares at Victor with soft eyes, falling for his manufactured vulnerability. Down the hall, someone is vacuuming. It is just a normal, boring household sound entirely funded by illicit blood money. Fast forward 4 weeks, and this toxic trauma bond is so thick you could cut it. Lena is finally exhausted enough to sleep, but week 5 shatters the illusion. It is a cozy Sunday in December. Lena is stirring soup at her sister Maya's place while little Jonah plays on the rug. Suddenly, the phone rings, and Victor barks a single harsh order to freeze. The warm illusion instantly dies. Never trust the quiet moments when you are swimming with sharks. Peace is just the time they take to reload. Victor drops the hammer like a cold-blooded surgeon, without a single shake in his voice. Lena's stalker sliced off his ankle monitor 40 minutes ago, and the cops have no clue where he is. The guy is a total ghost. Immediately, the dangerous man unleashes his top enforcer, Michael, shoving the women into the basement. You can feel the panic crashing through the screen as Lena tells Maya the horrifying news. They grab the kid and sprint for the stairs. Now watch Michael work. This guy never sweats. He sweeps that dark basement in 30 seconds flat, moving like a shadow hunting for meat. In this suffocating moment, these ruthless mobsters are Lena's only shield. It hits us with a really dark truth. Sometimes the only thing that can possibly save you from a hungry wolf is a much larger, deadlier beast waiting in the dark. Watch Michael clearing those shadowed closets before planting his huge body at the stairs like a concrete wall. He barks out the rules with a gravelly bite. No phones. 0 movement. Backup is coming. Maya clutches her 3-year-old son, and little Jonah is frozen in pure silence. It breaks your heart, reminding us how heavy trauma always steals the voices of the youngest kids first. Lena sits there violently trembling, desperately begging this cold-eyed hitman for just a tiny ounce of comfort. But Michael just stares back with empty shark eyes, promising the stalker will never breach that door. It is a bitter pill, but a true one. When genuine darkness comes knocking, you do not want a sweet, gentle soul by your side. You want a cold-blooded professional who knows exactly how to hold the line. You and I know how time warps when your brain is locked in pure survival mode. Lena has no clue if she has been shivering for 10 minutes or a full hour before the heavy rumble of engines shakes the floorboards. Deep voices echo upstairs. But Victor runs the scene like a general on a battlefield. He strolls down the stairs to check on the women, his huge ego practically suffocating the room. He smoothly apologizes to Maya, then clinically roasts the stalker's cowardice, promising the guy is already running blind. But hit pause and think about this. It leaves us with a heavy realization about human nature. The people who swoop in like superheroes to save the day are often the exact same ones who secretly crave the intoxicating power of holding your fragile life in their hands. Let's unpack this together, because what Victor does next is pure psychological manipulation. He casually mentions his goons are patrolling the streets, but then instantly flips into a warm, protective father figure. He drops to one knee, softening his rough voice to ask little Jonah about the dinosaur on his shirt. The kid's trust is entirely secured. With the boy won over, Victor tells Maya her whole family is moving to his fortified compound. He literally hijacks their reality in a single breath, all while keeping his distance from Lena like an untouchable god, pulling everyone's strings. It is wild to watch. We have to remember this harsh truth. The most dangerous prisons in this world are not made of cold iron bars. They are built entirely out of the warm, comforting illusion of safety. Victor projects an overwhelming aura of dominance that Lena painfully mistakes for genuine shelter. Meanwhile, Derek's big master plan falls apart. The stalker is snatched up just 3 hours later at some grimy bus station, shivering on a busted ankle like a total loser. With the threat gone, Victor hauls Lena into his private compound, quietly cutting every tie she has to the outside world. Late that night, he steps close to her in a dark hallway. Watch the brilliance here. He never lays a single finger on her. He just hovers, letting her feel the dangerous heat radiating from his chest, effortlessly asserting dominance over her fractured mind. The warning is deep. Total isolation almost never looks like a trap when you first step inside. Most of the time, it wears the exact mask of a perfect sanctuary. We have probably both felt the awful sting of guilt, but Lena is drowning in it right now. Victor stands in front of her looking entirely hollowed out. The guy has been wearing the exact same suit for 24 hours, running on pure fumes. Lena is caught in a violent mental spiral, obsessing over the fact that her stalker could have murdered her sister. Victor cuts right through her panic with the cold logic of the criminal underworld. He demands she only count the lives actually saved, burying any thoughts of collateral damage. Honestly, that is a jagged piece of wisdom. You only survive a nightmare by focusing fiercely on what you can control. But when she whispers the name of his dead sister, Kiara, his iron mask shatters. It just goes to show that even the most ruthless mobsters bleed from the ghosts they carry. Kiara would have been 51 years old by now. Just another lingering ghost haunting this massive, gilded cage. The silence between them stretches out, thick and heavy, until the housekeeper starts shuffling upstairs. That entirely ordinary sound breaks the intense spell, and Lena finally drops her guard. She confesses she feels severed from her old self, which is the painful reality of living in constant dread. Ironically, this violent, dangerous man is the only anchor keeping her tied to reality. His total lack of pity actually feels like a weird lifeline. Still, she throws up a quiet boundary, refusing to surrender to his control. It brings us to a beautiful realization. True healing does not start when the world gets peaceful. It begins the second you find the courage to voice your darkest thoughts to someone who refuses to look away. The emotional mechanics of this next scene are insane. Victor stands perfectly still, absorbing her broken confession without a single ounce of judgment. When Lena reaches out and grabs his forearm, she instinctively borrows his slow, steady pulse just to quiet the frantic hammering of her own heart. The connection is so grounding that she crashes into 9 hours of dreamless sleep, But come on, peace never lasts in a movie like this. The legal battle finally erupts, and Prosecutor Ellison plays a ruthless game. He hammers Lena on the witness stand, playing the aggressor just to force her out of her terrified shell. It is agonizing to watch, but it forces one ugly truth into the open. To defeat the monsters of your past, you must speak your truth into the light until the memories no longer make your hands shake. Let's really appreciate this payoff. Lena stares the prosecutor directly in the eye, her confident voice slicing right through the dead silence. She flat out refuses to carry the heavy baggage of guilt anymore, stating plainly that her ex hurt her simply because he got a sick thrill out of the cruelty. Watching her reclaim her power is breathtaking. She takes all that toxic shame and drops it squarely onto the abuser where it belongs. This is a hard truth we all need to permanently internalize. You are never responsible for the wreckage, broken people, just to make themselves feel tall. Over the next 4 days, Lena fiercely holds on to that unbreakable clarity. By the final afternoon, the sheer weight of her truth is so suffocating that even the stalker's lawyer slumps in his chair, surrendering. The scene freezes there. The jury hammers out a 12-year sentence in just 3 hours. Now watch Lena push those heavy courthouse doors open into the freezing February air. Her entire universe just flipped upside down. But look at the background extras. Strangers drinking lattes, arguing over cabs. That is the coldest joke of human existence. The world refuses to stop spinning just to hand you a trophy for your trauma. But look at the bottom of the steps. Victor, the mobster himself. Leaning on his dark sedan, she walks straight into his chest, burying her face in his coat, dry-eyed. Her nervous system simply unplugs. With her abuser finally caged, the survival adrenaline crashes hard, leaving behind nothing but a hollow, beautiful exhaustion. Watch his face. For one single heartbeat, this terrifying underworld boss goes rigid. The man can dismantle a cartel, but genuine human vulnerability paralyzes him. Slowly, his huge arms fold around her shaking frame. Watch the goons. They instantly stare at the pavement, giving their boss a private second to actually be human. Lena whispers for him to take her home, choosing a heavily armed Mafia compound as her safe space, and when they get in the car, he does not sit on the opposite side. He slides right up against her, in a business built entirely on paranoia. Closing that gap is a blood oath. Here is the painful beauty of it. Real safety is never about iron gates. It is about finding the one person who silently vows to slaughter your nightmares. Let's hit pause for a second, just you and I, to really absorb the shift happening in this scene. Outside that bulletproof glass, a harsh winter storm is burying the estate, but the fireplace is roaring. Lena wastes no time. She peels off that stiff courtroom suit and throws on a baggy sweater. Watch closely, because she is physically shedding the skin of a victim. She marches right up to Victor and deadpans that she needs to annihilate an entire pie. After surviving hell, craving something so stupidly normal is the ultimate flex of a healing spirit. It hits you right in the gut, does it not? We only truly beat the darkness the exact minute we allow ourselves to eat the damn pie, to embrace messy joy without flinching at the shadow behind us. The story leans into the glorious irony of this setup. Lena just walked out of a trial that nearly shattered her mind. Yet here she sits, shoveling warm pie into her mouth like it is a boring Tuesday. And look at Victor across the counter. He is a certified predator, a guy who makes bodies vanish, flawlessly playing the role of a cozy partner. They ignore the courthouse trauma. They just whisper about the snow stacking up outside. He built this compound to withstand a siege, but inside these walls, her broken brain actually stopped spinning. By 9, she is out cold on his leather sofa. True power does not always look like a locked cage. Sometimes it is just a warm fire keeping the wolves outside the door. Pay close attention to the camera work here. Victor steps into the doorway holding a mug, just staring at her sleeping form. Please do not mistake this for some cheesy romantic comedy beat. That is the cold, calculated stare of a man evaluating his own psychological hostage. He drops a blanket over her shaking shoulders, terrifyingly careful not to let his fingers graze her skin. He treats her like unexploded dynamite, then fades back into the dark. When she finally wakes up at 2 a.m, the emotional bill comes due. She sleeps for 3 straight days and loses her mind over a spilled cup of juice. It is harsh to watch, but it proves the golden rule. You can run away all you want, but trauma is a patient debt collector, and it always gets its money. Here is the detail that really twists the knife. Lena literally cannot remember the last time she walked down a sidewalk by herself. That is how deep his claws are buried. A month after the trial, a friend practically drags her to therapy. I love this therapist, Dr. Hahn. She does not feed Lena any garbage about positive thinking. She flat out says rewiring a shattered brain is going to be agony. And Lena actually shows up every single Tuesday for 2 years. Eventually, she gets so desperate to feel normal that she takes a miserable job at a dusty art gallery. She does not care about the paycheck. The mental oxygen is all that matters. Reclaiming your stolen life always starts small. You find one boring, quiet routine that is yours alone, and you never let it go. Watch the lighting change in this scene. The sickly gray filter is gone, and warm color is actually bleeding back into Lena's face. She is standing in that gallery, wearing an outfit she picked out without asking for permission. When your brain is drowning in trauma, just deciding where to hang a canvas feels like conquering a nation. Within weeks, she is tearing apart the back room. The grumpy boss admits she has a gift, and Lena laughs. A loud, ugly, beautiful laugh. But here is the gut punch. Every single evening, she clocks out and walks willingly back to Victor's compound. She locks herself back in the cage. It is agonizing to watch, but it is real. Healing starts in those tiny, safe cracks we carve out for ourselves. Even while the monster is still sleeping in our bed, she has her own money now. She has an escape hatch, but she refuses to take it, because the gravity of a master manipulator is impossible to escape. Watch them eat dinner. The silence is so thick you could chop it with a cleaver. They have not touched since the ballroom incident, and he is doing it on purpose. He is starving her, weaponizing his absence to make her insane. By June, the rubber band finally snaps. Victor struts into her gallery in a tailored suit, practically radiating menace until every customer flees. Later, standing on a windy bridge, Lena loses her mind. She screams at him, demanding to know what sick game he is playing. She forces the ugly truth into the light. Ignoring the elephant in the room never kills it. It just makes the elephant hungry. Freeze the frame right here, because the psychological chess match is peaking. Victor just lets her words hang over the freezing water. He has the chilling patience of a guy who orders hits over morning espresso. He is waiting for her to panic and apologize, but she does not break. She stares right into the eyes of a killer and refuses to wear his ring. She says she is done swapping one master for another. She tells him she needs the power to choose him, and bluntly admits there will be days she hates his guts. Then she demands a normal Friday date. It is the most triumphant moment of the movie. Real freedom is never handed to you on a silver platter by the people holding the keys. You have to bare your teeth, claw it back, and dare them to stop you. Watch his reaction. The streetlights hit his jaw, and the dangerous man actually agrees to Friday. Lena tells him to be ready by 6:10 sharp then. The impossible happens, Victor laughs. It is a rusty, gravelly sound like an engine turning over after years. You can literally see Lena's shoulders drop as a padlock inside her chest snaps open. But do not fall for the romantic music. This is just a prisoner getting high on a single drop of rain, of course. The actual date is a cinematic disaster. She gets stuck at work, shows up late, and the snooty restaurant has already given their table away. It is hilarious and painful. You can script your perfect comeback all you want, but the universe loves to shred the pages when you are not looking. The restaurant host stammers out a pathetic apology now. We both know this is the exact disrespect that usually ends with Victor breaking someone's jaw. Lena actually exhales, foolishly thinking her monster is showing mercy. She is wrong. This is a quieter form of manipulation. He smoothly pivots, walking her down the block to a dingy pizza window on Grand Avenue. They eat greasy slices on the sidewalk, dripping oil all over his expensive suit. When he drops her off at 9:30, he does not try to come inside. He casually says he had fun, agrees to next Friday, and walks away into the dark without touching her. It is brilliant sometimes. The most terrifying way to conquer someone's mind is to politely walk away and leave them desperately wanting more. The rhythm of this dangerous little dance was built to make her reach for him first. Victor never texts first. He never begs. He leaves wide, quiet spaces for her longing to fill. Lena knows the tactic now, and that knowledge makes the wanting more humiliating, not less. On their fourth date, midnight settles over her kitchen, and she catches herself touching his jaw the way he once guided her chin. She stops before the kiss, trembling. Victor does not move. For once, the choice hangs there untouched when she finally kisses him. It is not surrender. It is a question neither of them can answer safely. Right after that kiss, Victor tells her to sit. Then he drops the earthquake. He is walking away from the underworld. Enzo will inherit the blood-soaked empire, and Victor will keep only the clean real estate. 18 months, he says. It sounds like a sacrifice until Lena hears the sharper truth underneath. A man who can leave a kingdom whenever he chooses has been choosing violence all along. She asks why now. Victor answers without flinching. Because Derek's ledger proved that every secret empire eventually finds the people sleeping upstairs. He explains it with cold precision. He is 47, tired of watching exits. Tired of men with guns deciding whether his family survives another night. He refuses to say he is doing it for her. That would be too easy. Too beautiful, too manipulative. He says he is doing it because he finally understands that power is only useful until it starts eating the people beside you. Lena wants to trust him, but the ledger taught her better. She tells him change is not a speech. It is a pattern that survives when nobody is applauding. Victor nods because there is no argument strong enough to soften that. The next 18 months do not turn into a clean redemption. They are rough, humiliating, and often ugly. Derek sends polite, poisonous letters from prison, each one trying to drag Lena back into the old version of herself. In August, she wakes screaming so hard Rosa and Victor run upstairs. In October, a missed appointment sends her wandering through freezing streets for 3 hours. When she returns, Victor is waiting by the door, pale with fear. He does not grab her. He only steps aside and lets her enter on her own feet. It is a small thing, but small things are where real change has to prove itself. Winter presses down, and Lena begins to understand that healing is not the opposite of damage. It is learning which parts of the damage no longer get to drive. She dreams of her dead father. She avoids mirrors. She spends whole afternoons in quiet galleries just to remember the woman who once chose colors for a living. Victor ages in front of her, losing men, money, and the easy fear that used to open every door. He does not become harmless. No one with his past becomes harmless, but the house slowly stops feeling like a trap designed only for her and starts feeling like a battlefield they are both trying to leave. After midnight, his old life still claws at the walls. Calls come in low voices. Cars leave without headlights. One April night, Victor comes home drunk. Not violent, just ruined. He says leaving the underworld cost him the only 2 friends he ever trusted. Lena does not comfort him like a nurse hired by his guilt. She sits across from him and tells him grief is not a receipt he can hand her for sympathy. If he wants a different life, he has to keep choosing it when it gives him nothing back. He laughs once, bitter and tired, then lowers his head because she is right. By spring, the world starts calling Victor a businessman instead of a crime lord, as if new headlines can wash old blood clean. Lena does not let herself be fooled by the rebrand. She keeps her own bedroom. She keeps Karen's number. She keeps a bank account Victor cannot touch. The toothbrush in his bathroom arrives slowly, not as surrender, but as a test she repeats every morning. Can she choose to stay today and still know where the exits are? By their 3rd summer together, the garden wedding is beautiful, but beauty no longer gets to erase the cost. The judge officiating the ceremony has known Victor since his dirtiest years, and Lena sees the irony clearly. She stands in the dress she chose herself, holding a bouquet with steady hands. Her vows are not a fairy tale. She says her old life did not die the night Victor found her. It fought, screamed, and crawled forward. She says love cannot be rescue, and it cannot be ownership. If they survive, it will be because both of them keep telling the truth when lies would be easier. Victor's eyes darken at that, because this vow gives him less worship and more responsibility. Victor's voice cracks when he promises to cross the room for her, but Lena hears the old danger inside the beautiful line. After the wedding, guests drink until 2 in the morning. Later, at 35, she gives birth to their child, and the old patterns try to return in softer clothes. The baby binds them in a way no vow ever could. Rosa moves closer. Victor grows watchful. Lena feels the house narrowing around her again and names it before it can become invisible. She tells him fatherhood is not another excuse to guard every door. If he wants a family, he has to let it breathe. Sleep deprivation strips everything down to the bone. Lena survives on 2-hour naps, snapping at shadows and forgetting simple words. Victor reads to the baby at 3 in the morning, not as a saint, but as a man trying awkwardly to become useful without taking over. Rosa crosses lines, scolding Lena when she cries from exhaustion. This time Lena does not swallow it. She tells Rosa to leave the room. Her voice shakes, but the order stands. Victor backs her quietly and immediately. It is not a grand romantic moment. It is better than that. It is a boundary being defended in ordinary daylight. On an October Wednesday, Lena stands by the sink washing a bottle while the baby tears into a banana. Victor sits at the table, silver at his temples, pretending to be an ordinary businessman with a laptop full of clean numbers. Autumn light softens the kitchen until the whole strange life almost looks simple. A sparrow lands outside the window, and Lena feels something close to peace. Then she checks herself. Peace is not the same as numbness. Safety is not the same as silence. For once, she can tell the difference before the feeling disappears. For years, her body was wired for the next blow. When the blow stopped coming, her nervous system did not instantly become free. It sagged. It went quiet. It mistook exhaustion for calm, now with wet hands and cold coffee. She turns and finds Victor watching her. Old Lena would have softened the moment. This Lena asks why he is staring. He says he was wondering if she was all right. She says he can ask without studying her like a locked door. He accepts the correction. No speech. No wounded pride. Just a nod. That is how a pattern starts to change. A decade passes. The baby is 10. Younger boy has joined the noise. And Victor is pushing 57. Lena looks back at that October morning without pretending it was simple. She was not saved by a prince. She was not merely chosen. She was trapped, helped, used, loved, and forced to rebuild herself inside a life that never fit cleanly into one word. That truth is harder to live with than any pretty lie. But it is also the only truth that leaves room for her own strength. She wakes up every day and chooses what still belongs to her. Her victories are small, and she no longer lets anyone mock them. A gallery job that pays little but carries her name. A painting hung where she wants it. A walk with no bodyguard and no apology. These are not gifts from Victor. They are pieces she has taken back, one by one. The cruel part is that some freedoms still arrive late, carrying fingerprints from the men who once controlled the doors. Lena knows this. She refuses to teach her daughter that endurance is the same as love. She wants Kiara to recognize a cage even when it has flowers on the gate. That is the lesson she finally dares to pass down. Not that a terrifying man can save you. Not that pain becomes beautiful when it ends in a mansion. She teaches Kiara to listen to the tight feeling in her chest, to keep her own money, to call her aunt before shame can isolate her, and to leave the first time love starts sounding like a threat. On the 7th anniversary of the gala, Lena stands at the upstairs window while snow covers the garden. Downstairs, the house is loud with children, dishes, footsteps, life, for once. She does not call it luck, she calls it complicated. She presses her palm against the freezing glass and studies her reflection. The bruises are gone, but some marks never fully leave. They simply stop deciding every breath. Downstairs, the kettle screams. Victor calls her name. Calm and familiar. The old invisible Lee tugs once. Out of habit. Out of memory. Lena feels it. Then she turns slowly, not because she has to, but because she chooses to answer on her own terms. Before leaving the window, she looks at the snow one more time. Freedom is not a place someone carries you to. It is the door you keep learning how to open yourself. One of the most meaningful lessons in Lena's journey is that survival is not the same as freedom. When Victor removes her from Derek's control, Lena becomes physically safe, but her emotional recovery has only just begun. The story carefully shows that leaving an abusive relationship is not the final chapter. It is the beginning of a long and difficult process of reclaiming identity. For 2 years, Derek controls Lena's clothes, friendships, words, movements, and even her relationship with her sister. He makes her life smaller until she can barely recognize herself. This is an important educational point. Abuse is not only physical violence, it is also emotional control, isolation, manipulation, humiliation, and the slow destruction of confidence. After Lena leaves, She must learn how to make choices again. She chooses what to wear. She chooses whether to press charges. She chooses when to talk, when to rest, when to see her sister, and when to trust Victor. These small choices are powerful because they return ownership of her life to her. The story teaches that healing often begins with ordinary decisions. Victor's role is meaningful because he does not demand control over Lena in exchange for protection. He gives her safety, but he also gives her time. He tells her that whatever happens between them must be her decision. This is a very important lesson about healthy support. Helping someone does not mean taking over their life. Real support gives power back to the person who was harmed. By the end, Lena understands that she was not simply saved by someone else. She had to choose herself every day. She had to walk forward, go to therapy, work again, rebuild trust, and create a life that belonged to her. The lesson is powerful. No one can live your life for you. Others may open the door, but you must be the one who walks through it.